Right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Rings of Power is an offence to Irish people now. Yes. Now, in fairness, I can actually see why people have been taking offence to it, but I always find these situations to be absolutely hilarious. Predominantly, simply, because, of course, Rings of Power went on this bizarre diversity rant and calling everyone a racist. And yet now, they're being lambasted for dangerous stereotypes and harmful representation. Because the Harfoots, and in fairness, the Harfoots are all Irish, and they're all dirty, grubby. They're essentially Irish travellers in this. I mean, the allegory is not lost on anyone, or at least the sort of parallels are not lost on anyone with half a brain cell. So it's comical. Like, I can definitely see where people are coming from. And this is just the left eating the left. And it's funny and always good to be highlighted because, of course, the striving for all of this constantly does actually backlash eventually. And this is what we're seeing here. So this is The Guardian, notorious left-wing shit rag in the UK. Irish people have faced centuries of discrimination. Why are Lord of the Rings accents so offensively bad? I mean, what a headline. What a headline. Now, the Harfoots accents in the Rings of Power are just deeply inappropriate. I mean, it's not inappropriate. All right, the accents aren't inappropriate. They're awful. But Amazon's drama isn't the first fantasy show to struggle with dialect. All right, then. I personally enjoyed when they were all sort of Dorset, Cornish in the original Lord of the Rings, because that was actually more reminiscent to what they should have been. So the Shires is all sort of southwest England, basically. I mean, obviously the Shires are everywhere, but the Shire and sort of what it was representative of Tolkien was Dorset and that sort of area. The Shires. I mean, it's England, it's quintessential England, basically, but it needed to have that sort of, that sort of rural accent. I don't know why they went with Irish, but odd. What is this famine cosplay? Asked Ed Power in the Irish Times after glimpsing the Harfoots wandering around Middle-earth. In the 3 weeks since then, he has been far from the only person to object to these simpleton proto-hobbits, who, Power wrote, were rosy of cheek, slathered in muck, wearing twigs in their hair, and speaking in stage Irish accents that make the cast of Wild Mountain Thyme sound like Daniel Day-Lewis. I mean, this is hilarious. But again, ladies and gents, you strive to constantly represent and constantly show everything. Again, it's just left eating itself. It's insanely comical to me. So indeed, Amazon's multi-million-dollar series has upset just about everybody since it debuted on the streaming platform. I like how Guardian, left-wing shit rag, actually acknowledges this, but I bet you they'll take a racist stance. You have Tolkien scholars who say it's not Tolkien, the anti-Amazon folk who object to the company as a whole and the vast money spent on the series, and those who see the Harfoots accents as, at worst, clumsy, tone-deaf cultural appropriation and a reinforcement of negative stereotypes. I mean, it's not cultural appropriation, is it? Like, the Irish didn't invent rolling around in mud and moving from place to place. Like, are you high? What are you talking about? Far less legitimately and more malevolently, you have the uproar about actors of colour being cast in the series. Again, no, most people just wanted correct representation of Tolkien's works. So it's funny, isn't it, in The Guardian's efforts to bring to light the whole Irish element and how offensive it is, completely overlooking, the very justified commentary on, well, no, it should be Tolkien, and there shouldn't, you wouldn't have those kind of things. Very funny. But considering Amazon's commitment to that welcome diversification of Middle-earth, the fact that no one in production stopped to consider that Irish people might be upset by the Harfoots is especially baffling. Okay, but why? Why would they? I mean, look, if you didn't think that people in the production stopped to consider that people would be upset that, elves, for instance, weren't universally one colour, because that's what they were supposed to be, then why would you think that anyone would stop to consider that Irish people might be offended by the Harfoots? Why do you think anyone would? Like, it's not going to come to anyone's mind, is it? Because the push is just diversity. They probably thought they were doing you a favour. Leith McPherson is the dialect coach on the Rings of Power. Has 25 years experience in the field, having worked on Peter Jackson's Hobbit trilogy, among many other films. In various interviews, she's spoken of the research and craft involved in coaching dialect on a project of this scale. And in an interview with Inverse, she said that the aim was to make sure that the accent doesn't take audiences to their nanas down the road. The Harfoots then speak with an Irish base to their accent, but she continued, they do not speak as if they're from a particular cross street in Dublin. It's essentially, I guess the best way of looking at that is like it's a neutral Irish accent. So in Britain, you speak with, you know, if you were trying to get someone to speak with a neutral accent that doesn't really come from anywhere in the UK, it would just be neutrality. You know, because in the UK, in Britain, England, for instance, each various location, like you can just go, I can go an hour down the road and people round their R's and sound like they're farmers, right? Oh, you are my combine harvester. They literally, I know that sounds funny. That's actually what people sound like just an hour down the road from me. So neutrality is kind of what they were going for. I can see that. But again, it's not lost on me. Like I definitely see that, you know, Irish people could be offended by this because, I mean, they're very clearly a representation of Irish travellers, which is comical. Now they say here, what we're worried about is that there's an accent that is identified globally as Irish that somehow still means primitive. That's not what anyone's saying. Since we've heard hobbits speak in Peter Jackson's movies without Irish accents, the vague assumption is inculcated that once upon a time the shaggy, itinerant Harfoots were Irish, but they evolved past that by the third age. That's not what the implication is at all, in fact. The Rings of Power is far from the only offender, of course. And then they just start talking about loads of other things, you know, banging on about, again, you know, how people should sound certain ways and things like that. So even when not done badly, fantasy's choice of which accents to give its characters is fraught with problems. Oh my god. Harfoots aside, almost everyone else in the Rings of Power talks with a British accent because it's supposed to be British. The elves, or highborn men, speak in received pronunciation, neutrality, also known as Southern Standard British English, neutrality, among other names. The jovial but grumpy dwarves are Scottish. They also seem to like a drink. Oh my god. Although their views on iron brew and deep-fried food have yet to be disclosed. The evil orcs are Cockneys, while the rugged Southlanders, gruff, hostile, in need of a good wash, could be from the Ginnels of Lancashire. I mean, but guys, funnily enough, that is part of, you know, the representation of what Tolkien was going for, I guess, in it being you know, a European myth and legend. Like, why is this suddenly they're like, oh, I can't do that? It's lazy, says Natalie Barber, professional of linguistics at Nottingham Trent University, who specialises in social linguistics, the study of accents within society and its effects on language and identity. It's a real quick shortcut. No, it's not. Oh, so funny. It's, to me, this is the Ouroboros, right? You create this scenario. The Ouroboros is the snake that consumes itself, it feeds upon itself. You create this drive for diversity and representation and, you know, striving for an equalitative outcome, right? This is the, and also sort of cross-section of societies where, you know, everything is at a crossroads. Everything must be in a box. When we start to look at it like that, this is the scenario in which this is the eventual outcome, right? Is that it's consistently consuming itself. Oh, you tried to do this. Oh, it's bad. Oh, you must be doing this. Oh, and then they'll do this. And then there'll be another thing to complain about. And then they'll change it to the thing which they wanted them to do. And then they'll complain about that. It's the ever-feeding cycle of this rhetoric. It's such nonsense. But yeah, it's funny. To me, it's absolutely hilarious because people. I always find it funny when people, you know, comment on something like this. Oh, this is representation of Irish travellers. They're all dirty and blah 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 blah. It's like, well, you know, stereotypes do come from somewhere. I'm not saying Irish travellers are dirty, but people often wonder why people don't want, you know, gypsies to rock up to their locale in the UK because they leave the place looking like a shithole. If gypsies turned up and left the place looking lovely, people would be like, yeah, please come, please. But they don't. They leave burnt out cars, dogs starving, dump everywhere, fly tipping everywhere. It's just not nice. So, but the real comical element here is that because this stereotype is founded in reality, because this is the real crux of it, right? And this is the Guardian revealing itself, and everyone that they've had comment on this revealing themselves. Because I would say that, and there's people in this audience right now going, "You bigot, why are you saying that?" But wait, these individuals, like, I'm happy to say that the stereotype comes from reality. These people hide behind a veil of I'm better than you. I have no prejudices at all. Okay, then why did you see gypsies when you saw Harfoots? Wait, because it's founded in reality. The stereotype is there in reality. Day-to-day life, it's there. We see it. So, yeah, it's funny. To me, it's very, very funny. But I thought I'd do this video. Let me know what you think down below. Take care.